maybe it's Friday and you're thinking about something else. Okay, Jan, I guess we waited enough, and it's all yours. You go with your presentation.
Can you
Okay.
see it?
Yes, fine, just fine.
Okay, let's start. So the main topic today is I will share some tools, how to get insights about your current SEO performance, and make it visual in a way that's understandable, that you can sell it internally within your company or within your organization or to your clients. And basically the trick is to use free tools. Like Anton already said in the introduction, there are a lot of expensive tools, but using free tools to get the same detailed insights is actually more accessible for everyone. And a good way to start getting into SEO on a really detailed level without spending too much money. Maybe first a little bit about myself. Anton already said it. I'm a brand ambassador for Majestic. But above all, I'm an international freelance SEO. I work for a lot of international focused clients. I've been working in the United States for an agency. I've worked for European based agencies. My main focus until date has been on financial and travel markets, but I also have a lot of experience in the gambling and other smaller industries. So quite a broad portfolio of clients, which makes it easy to actually compare what's happening within Google within different industries, which for me is really important. And I think it's quite a USP that if you have a broad experience, it's more easy to detect what Google is actually doing in terms of changes, updates, and the way they look to search engine results. If I'm not doing SEO, I'm riding my bike. Next summer I will do a race starting in Belgium and finishing in Turkey. It's around 4,000 kilometers just in one go, with some quick sleeps in between. So that requires some training, and it's a good balance with the ongoing SEO world in which changes happen every day. Next to that, I like to share my knowledge a lot. So you will see me around the world speaking about all kinds of SEO topics. Like I said earlier, my background is really technical. So the content and marketing part of SEO is not my strongest point. So whenever you have any questions about technical SEO, I probably can help you out. As you can see, I'm really interested in science and physics in particular, and that's exactly what is needed to actually understand Google in a way that you actually can see why Google is making certain steps or why they're not able to make certain steps. People have been complaining about spam, for example, a lot. But as you can understand, Google, it's really difficult to tackle spam on a World Wide Web scale. So I try to actually understand why Google is making certain decisions and how it takes place in the form of algorithms and formulas. So for today, I want to make one disclaimer is sometimes people always ask for more data, more numbers, more graphs, more details. But if you look to the research done on the effectiveness of data, there's always a certain point that if you get more data, the quality of the data gets lower, or the way of interpreting data is getting more difficult. So be aware that you prevent over-analyzing. Be aware that you're not collecting data for the sake of collecting data. One of the things I always do is before I start collecting data is actually forming questions that I want to get an answer for before I actually start collecting data. To sum it up, my data-driven SEO methodology is actually quite simple. Why to keep it simple is because I want to make it understandable for my clients, for the companies I work for, to make sure everybody's on the same line. It's really important that everybody understands the data you're sharing. So the first step is actually define questions. So before collecting data, make sure you have a certain amount of questions that you want to answer with the data. The next step, of course, is collecting data, and that's what we will talk about today, is which tools can you use to actually collect that data that you require for certain SEO-related questions. And the third point is I will show you some examples of of tools that can help you out when you have a lot of data available to actually make it visual instead of just an Excel sheet with a lot of numbers. So just some random facts I want to know of every client I work for. Are, for example, top 3 ranking pages. So what are the pages that are already ranking well in Google, and how are they performing? Are they actually bringing in revenue? Why is it ranking number 3? Is it because they have great content, or do they have a lot of internal links? Or actually the next question can be with regards to links. So I want to collect a lot of link data to see which pages are getting most external links, and does it affect in a positive or a negative way the way certain pages are ranking. If you look to the pingwing algorithm based on link spam, is it actually harming your website in certain ways? And pingwing can be tricky, or manual link penalties can be tricky, so you want to know which pages are getting most of the links and what kind of links it are. And another one, especially since the upcoming Google quality control of content, Google actually starting to understand content. It's important to get an idea about the quality of the average content of your website. So it's really important to, per URL, know what actually the content is and how it performs. So before we can actually start analyzing, you first need to know what your website is in terms of URLs. So we need to identify every URL within the website. There are multiple tools for it. Overall, there's mainly one identifier to actually map a website, and that's URL. And based on that URL, we can map every other data point we need. So I will not go into the VLOOKUP function of Excel, just use this URL, but make sure you master this function, because this will be the most used function in Excel for the rest of your life. So we want to know every website URL, and to know every website URL, we need to do some crawling. The tool I like most is Screaming Frog, but the thing is, it's limited to 500 URLs per website for the free version, so we can't use it today. Luckily, there are some alternatives. One of the tools I like is the Italian Visual SEO. It's basically a Windows version, so for Mac it won't work, but they're busy translating it. And basically, you give in a URL and it starts crawling your website, and you will get back a lot of data about titles, meta descriptions, internal linking, etc. So if you look for the most advanced free SEO crawling tool, have a look at Visual SEO. Microsoft, it's quite a bit old school tool, still has the ISS SEO toolkit. It's basically works only on Windows, and it's easy to install, but the functionalities are quite limited. But in this stage of the process, we just want to have a list of URLs. So no need to actually gather all kinds of other data, because we can use all the tools for it. It's a quick and fast way to actually crawl a website and get a list of URLs. And then the most old school tool, which is also the fastest if you have a fast internet connection, is still Xenu. I think it's one of the first publicly made available crawling tools, and it actually gives you back most of the detailed data you require to build the first list of links. Yeah, I already mentioned, if you're using a Mac, it's not something you want to do as an SEO, because I think 95% of the traffic or the tools is actually built for Windows. So if you're using a Mac, buy a real computer. There are some tools built for the Mac software. One of them is Integrity. It's similar to Screaming Frog. They also have a paid version, but the free version is unlimited in terms of the number of URLs it crawls per website. But it's limited in functionality, so it won't give you all the on-page SEO element data, but it does give you a good overview of the URLs of your website. Separate from Windows or Mac, there's a Java-based spider. You can download it over here, and it will also crawl your website. It's not as fast, but it works. So especially for smaller and mid-sized websites, this one actually works quite okay. If you really want to start crawling websites with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, this is not the best tool you can use. If you go really the tech side and you want to start programming your own one, check this Python-based link checker. You actually need some programming skills to get it working. It's all explained on this page, so I won't go into detail this afternoon because we have limited time. But it actually works quite well to actually crawl a website and get a nice list of all the internal links and the URLs present. And if you don't have access to any tools, or you're not sure about if a website is actually linking to every other page within a website that's actually live, I always check against the sitemap files, because sitemap files are usually built automatically based on the database behind the website. So you're sure that you find every URL that's in the website by checking every sitemap.xml. Especially websites that have done some SEO optimization already usually have a good optimized sitemap. If you work with WordPress, for example, the sitemap files generated by most plugins are complete and can be a good starting point to actually get information about all the live URLs. So once you've crawled the website or downloaded all the sitemaps, you have a complete list of all the URLs that are within your website, and then we can start actually going to get some data about those URLs. So we need to enrich the data set of URLs, and the first thing we of course want to know is what are the tools. The main tool you can use for it, and it's free for most functionality, is SEO Tools for Excel. Once you've installed this SEO Tools for Excel, there are some new functions added to the Excel program, which means that you can actually use either their user interface and actually use that, or you can basically use it like other Excel functions and type in these queries. So if you use the HTML title, the HTML meta description, and HTML H1 functions, you will get the data back, and you actually end up with a nice list of all the on-page relevant SEO elements. So once you've done that, you have a nice list of every page with the unique titles, the meta descriptions, the H1. There are some tools in Excel, SEO tools for Excel, to actually count the number of words on a page, and I will come back to you later why that's important. But for now, it's important to know and to understand that the more or the better the content is, the higher the chances that you will start ranking. Because you crawled the website, you can easily use every crawler has an internal and outlink number. So I want to know which is the page within a website that is linked most. So I've added a column of inlinks and a column of outlinks, so I know the relationship between certain pages, which later on in the process we can actually match to build an internal linking profile. Once we have optimized or gathered all the SEO relevant data per page, I actually want to know how a certain page is performing based on a URL. So what are the sources that we actually can use? One of the main sources I use is Google Search Console. This is actually an old screenshot. But Google Search Console has a lot of data on individual page level. If you have a big website, because the data within Google Search Console is limited to only 1,000 or 1,500 items per export, verify individual folders. So with every individual folder, you get in your set of 1,000 or 1,500 keywords or pages back. So the more folders you verify, the more detailed the information is you will get back. One of the SEOs of the Next Web last week published an article about why they have over 800 individual URLs within the Search Console, because they can use it to actually calculate back the keywords that are hidden with not provided for over 70%. So by verifying individual folders, you get more detailed information, which is really important if you have a big website with hundreds and thousands of URLs or keywords that you're targeting. Once you're in the search analytics within Search Console, it's really important to specifically download data for desktop and mobile data, because the performance and the rankings between those interfaces within Google is completely different. So if your website is not optimized for mobile yet, you probably see that the average ranking, the average number of clicks, etc. is completely different from the desktop numbers. So you can use the device filter to actually segment the data for desktop, mobile, and tablet, and later on also use that same segments within Google Analytics. So you can actually see how Google is dealing with your website on the specific platforms. Again, be aware that the data within Search Console is only limited to 90 days. So you only have 3 months of data. Once you start comparing it with other data sources, make sure that you keep in mind it's only 90 days and not a year or longer, for example. But it's a good start to actually see how a website is ranking, what the number of impressions are, to see how popular certain page is in terms of the keywords they are ranking for, the average CTR, and the position. So what I always do within Search Console is download as many specific data as possible. When I know and I can't filter on specific URLs based on folders, like I showed you before with my cycling website, I try to filter out on a different way, so just on page URLs or on image URLs, for example. Based on the individual filters which you can use within the page filter, you can get detailed insights about a specific pattern of URLs. So once I have the Search Console data, I know how it's actually performing in Google, but I also want to know how the actual visitors are performing once they are on my website. So of course, a #1 ranking is really nice, but if people bounce back to the search results, or people are actually not buying something, or actually converting into an email newsletter subscription, your traffic is not worth anything. So always download page performance data. Like I said, make segments for different platforms, so for mobile and desktop at least, and maybe also make a segment for tablet specifically, and then download it, every segment individually, and add it to the Excel to make a good comparison about the performance. Again, if your website is not mobile optimized, or what's popular nowadays is that you actually have a mobile first website, maybe your desktop visitors are not performing that well, make sure that you have enough insights to actually use or base conclusions on. Google Analytics is free and is unlimited in terms of data. I must say, if you really have big numbers of data in Google Analytics, the data can be a bit untrustworthy. But again, I think for this analysis, it's important that you see the ratios between different pages, and not about the specific data points themselves. What I always download from Google Analytics is at least the number of sessions, number of new sessions. Bounce rate for me is really important, because I think that Google actually uses the bounce rate to determine the quality of a page for quite a big part. The session duration, so is the session duration actually complying with what you would expect? If you have a page with a lot of text, like a blog article, you expect people to read it, so the session duration will have a certain amount of time before people actually can read the whole article. If you have a website about the weather in Spain, people just want to know the temperature or if it's going to rain, so the session duration will be quite low. And then the most important thing for me is the conversion or the e-commerce data, because then you actually can start prioritizing your activities based on the actual revenue or the actual conversions that a user is making. So Now we have an indication of the URL-based performance data. We want to make the next step is also look to SEO-specific data, and one of the most important ranking factors right now and probably in the upcoming 5 years is links. So external links are still the most important part to actually influence rankings for at least 90% of the queries in Google. So it's important to know what are the links pointing to my website and what are the ratios between different pages of your website. So like Anton said, I'm an ambassador for Majestic, and the nice thing about Majestic is you can actually get free data about your own domains by verifying it via Webmaster Tools or actually Google Search Console. So first make an account within Majestic, then go to the Webmaster Tools section and add your domain. Then you will get a pop-up pointing to Google Search Console. So Google can actually say to Majestic, okay, he or she is the owner of this domain, and Majestic will say, okay, now you get your data for free. If you go back to Majestic, within this pages section, you can download the individual numbers of link data and actually can add it easily to your Excel sheet. Once you've done that, you can actually see which are the most linked pages and which are the pages that maybe need some more links. So right now we have looked to really SEO related signals. But another thing is what I look at is what's the social value of a page. SEO is by far not the only channel you can generate traffic with. And sometimes it's good to look to how a page is performing while it's not ranking in Google. So how is it performing on social media? How is it performing in other channels? So not only download your SEO related traffic numbers, also download your overall performance of your website. And actually, if you want to have more detailed insights, you can use Google Analytics to actually segment the data per channel. So get your paid traffic and compare it to SEO related traffic. Get your social traffic and compare it to your actual performance of the overall. Social value also means is your content being shared? Of course, not for every platform it's equally important. For e-commerce websites, I can imagine that most category pages will never be shared across social channels like Twitter or Facebook. But product pages could be shared if it's worth sharing. So you want to know the number of shares per network per page. One of the tools that's free, and I use it a lot, is Social Analytics. It's really an awesome tool. You give in your URL, and it starts crawling your whole website, and then per URL, it actually starts getting social data. So this is a screenshot from my blog, and you can actually see a list of URLs, and then you can see in the top list how many shares on Google Plus, how many Facebook likes it has, how many pins on Pinterest, how many shares, or actually in LinkedIn, it's actually clicks on the link, how many delicious shares, and the total shares in overall all the social networks combined. I'm not sure why Twitter is not in it anymore. It used to be there, probably because Twitter shut down the API for it. But probably the guys will come up with a new solution for it. But it gives a good overview of what are the most important pages from a social perspective. So maybe a page is socially really interesting for you, but it's not ranking well for SEO. So for me, that would be a insight that actually creates an action. That means that we need to have that page ranking better in Google because it's already performing well based on social metrics. So once you have all that data available, you get one big sheet of data in Google Excel. And once you have that available, you can start analyzing it. I will show you a quick example of one of the sheets that's a result of the outcome. Let's see if this works. So right here you have a actual result of the analysis I did. So I removed some of the data points that I mentioned earlier that were not necessary for this analysis specifically. But over here you have the individual URLs of, in this case, an e-commerce webshop platform that actually contains, for me, one identifier, because I know the content is already optimized, are the page URLs. Then we have some on-page data that I wanted to check, is the number of words on a page. So let's ask myself the question, what are the pages that actually need more content because they are either ranking really well, because over here I have the current average position, and then I can actually calculate, so the average number of words. I know that this average page has around 600 words. So this is the home page, which doesn't contain any specific text. So that means that this page actually has around 400 words of additional content, which means that there are about 2 paragraphs of content written for this category page. So for this page, which is ranking on an average position of 10, I don't think it's smart to actually start writing more content. So by doing this, I can actually filter out all the pages with low number of words, or either look to the pages that already have a lot of content, so I know what are the pages that we need to optimize from a content perspective. Another thing is all the webmaster tools data. So I said, okay, collect it for 3 months and see what the number of impressions are. One of the things I always look at, okay, we have an average position of 3.6, but the CTR is quite low for this query or for this page. So maybe we have to optimize the meta description a bit more. Also look to the Google Analytics SEO data compared to the overall analytics data. So if a page is really getting a lot of traffic from other channels, you will see a discrepancy between the columns of SEO and the columns of Google Analytics data in general. And then we have all the Majestic link data in one column. So over here we actually have the number of incoming domains. Let's see if we can filter it out. And as you can see, there are only a few number of pages that actually are getting links, which means that for this client, the first thing I would do is actually start building more links to category pages, because there is only the home page and one other page that are actually getting links. These are the domains within their own portfolio that always link to their pages. So basically that's the lowest threshold. By doing these kind of analysis and having everything in one sheet, it's easy to make conclusions based on the interrelying relationships between different data points. So let's go back to the presentation sheets. I have a few of those analysis. Once you have that big Excel sheet ready, you can actually start finding quick wins on a really easy way. One of the
Okay, yeah, because we've been seeing your face. I don't know if it was planned. Okay, you got presentation. Sorry. Okay, go on.
So back to the presentation. So I've defined 7 quick wins that are really easily to extract once you have the main Excel sheet. One of the things I do is create a list of page URLs that already have established visibility. For me, that means they're in the top 10, but they don't have top positions yet in Google. And then I look to the number of internal links. So sometimes you find pages that are ranking, let's say, position 8, but are not linked in the main menu, in the site-wide menu. So they will probably have a low amount of internal links. So it's an easy way to increase the ranking by just adding it to the main menu, for example. You often see a lot of web shops have a lot of categories, and many of those categories are linked within the footer of the website. Basically, those lists of links in the footer based on these kind of analysis. So you know that a page is already ranking well, but just needs a bit more internal linking value or external linking value, but it's more difficult to get. So look to your internal linking ratios and see which are the already performing pages, but lack internal linking value. Next quick win is build a list of pages with a good amount of organic traffic, but with a high bounce rate. Like I said early on, if you know how the performance of a certain page is, especially if you look to bounce rate, that's something Google can measure. Actually, if you look to the coding of Google, in the JavaScript, you can see that there is a trigger going off once the user bounces back to Google. So Google is actually measuring how many users go back to the search results. As you can imagine, that could be a negative thing, but again, Google always benchmarks against the other results in your top 10. And for some search results or some queries, if people ask a simple question about what's the current time in London, probably Google will answer it right now within a knowledge card, but not in every language yet. People go to a site that actually shows the time in London, and people go back to Google to actually start shopping for trousers, for example. But that behavior will happen on every other top 10 website that's actually giving the same answer. So for that query, what's the time in London, the bounce rate for every website will be high. So always benchmark against what the other websites are offering in content, and make sure that you don't limit yourself by just looking at your own bounce rate numbers. Ask yourself the question, is the content relevant for the query people searching for? And actually update or adjust. Or another one, another solution can be actually remove content. If you don't actually offer certain products anymore, but you still get traffic, I would remove the page, because it actually can harm your overall website quality if you have a lot of pages that are not relevant anymore. Remove them or make them relevant, or make users go into the site by actually offering them different options. So if a product is sold out for a certain period, offer them other products, or offer them a newsletter subscription, or anything else that people can actually interact with. Find pages that are not ranking well, but still get a good valuable traffic from other sources. So if you can see that based on paid traffic or social traffic, a page is performing really well and actually generating a lot of conversions, that should be a page that actually needs more focus from an SEO perspective. So try to get those pages ranked really well. There could be different ways to achieve it. Add internal linkings, add more content, start a link building campaign. So basically go back to the basic SEO and start optimizing the page that you know that's actually generating revenue. Look for pages that are visible, have great on-page metrics. So all the on-page content, like a title, the H1, the meta descriptions, are already good, but don't have top 3 positions. Try to test with your internal linking or external linking. Add more links to a specific page and see if it's going up or down in the search engine positions. Look for pages with low amounts of internal links, but a lot of external links. Those are mainly the pages that in most cases will rank well already because of the amount of external links. Have a look at the content quality of those pages. So what I see a lot is that people have optimized their external link profile. Pages are already ranking quite well, but not really in the top 3 position because the content lacks some information. So people go back to the search results, bounce a lot, or lacks internal links. So last week I had a case of a really good performing page, but that never turned up when I crawled the website, because it wasn't linked in from any other page. So basically there was just a page floating around the website, and Google found it because there were external links pointing to it. So the biggest win over there was just adding a link to the main menu, and it started ranking top 3 immediately. The next thing is create an overview of the pages that are ranking well. but not having a great click-through rate. So you already have top 3 positions, but the meta description and the title are not actually convincing enough for people to click to your website. Or the other case could be that you're ranking for queries that are not relevant for your website as a brand, for example, that people know that you're not selling the product. Maybe then you can choose to actually focus yourself on different keywords. If you see that ranking for a certain keyword doesn't bring you any conversions, maybe rebuild the page. And you can easily see, based on the e-commerce data, if a certain page is ranking really well or not. Next thing is create a list of URLs that are visible in the search result, are getting impressions, but are not really having any content targeting a specific query. So if you see pages that are not getting any traffic and ranking top 50, have a look at those pages on an individual level and see what is the content on those pages. Is it actually really thin content? In my eyes, thin content means if it's not targeting a specific topic or is really low in number of words and actually not describing a certain topic in a broad way. A lot of Wikipedia articles are actually ranking well because the content about a specific topic is the best content you can get for that specific query. And in those cases, mostly optimizing the content will be the most effective way to actually get a share of the impressions that they're already getting. So one of the other things is if you have all those questions answered and you have collected all the data, it's important to actually convince your stakeholders. So if you work for a client or you work within an agency or you work in-house and you want to convince your boss, it's always good to think about how to convince them, because most will ask, okay, this will cost me a lot of money, or if you send them this Excel sheet, they will never understand the ratios between internal linking. So for me, the key always is to make it visual. Make it visual in a way that's an understandable set of data points, and not just send them an Excel sheet and saying, look, the number of external links for every page is really low, so the website is not performing. Try to visualize it. Always use funny examples, that works the best. So one of the things I try to do if I'm talking about website structure is actually visualizing it. So this is a screenshot of the internal relations, the internal links for a certain e-commerce platform with a website that actually has 7 languages. And then I wanted to show that the internal linking was not really well optimized because there were only specific clusters, and there's a lot of random pages that only get 1 or 2 links. Those are the white lines, actually the relations or the links between different pages. And if you show your manager a screenshot like this, he will be immediately interested. If you show them a Excel file, they won't. One of the things I always do is optimize internal link structures based on visualizations like that. Since we don't have that much time to go through every step, but you already crawled the website, so you can actually use that data to download all the internal linking relationships. If you use Xenu or Screaming Frog, you can actually just export the internal linkings. I've listed a few tutorials that actually explain in a step-by-step way how to actually start converting an Excel sheet with internal links to a graph I just showed you. You use Gephi, which is a standalone tool, which also is able to actually calculate page rank numbers. Or if you use Excel, you can use NoteXL to visualize the relationships between pages. Go to the links and you will see either YouTube films or step-by-step explanations to actually make a graph like this. So one of the slides I presented them is, okay, we have these pages and there are a number of them just flying around somewhere in the website, and they're not really part of the overall structure. And then we noticed that some of those pages were created separately because they were important. But because they were important and the current CMS was not able to deal with those specific pages, they just made it manually, but they weren't thinking about how to optimize it from an SEO perspective. So we analyzed all those outlying pages and we actually came up with a solution to interlink it better, or in this case, for some of those pages, we added a link in the footer. One of the other strange things with this website was the site has 6 languages, which you can clearly see there are 6, or in this case 7, clusters of internal links pointing to all the parts of the websites within a certain language, which makes sense. But there also was a 7th cluster, and it occurred that there was a complete copy of the website of the English version without the English folder pointing to it. So by doing this, you know that you can expect 6 clusters of links, and you actually start visualizing it and you notice that there's a 7th one. It's an easy, quick win to make sure that they remove the irrelevant cluster. If you visualize it like this, it's really easy to make it understandable to non-technical people, of course. For content optimization, it's always a tricky one, because if you have a big list and you say, okay, I want those 1,000 pages we need more content for, they will always say, okay, that will cost us a lot of money, and why would we do it? I always go back to the research done in the market. So this is a graph of search metrics. I think this is the search factors of 2014. There hasn't been any change in regards to this, but what they did is they looked to the positions in Google and the number of words a specific position in Google had in terms of content. You always have to be a bit skeptical, because you can also turn it around. This graph actually shows that there's a clear relationship between the better your position in Google is, the more words a page has. If you turn it around, is of course the pages that are optimized well from an SEO perspective will rank good. And we as SEOs have always said, okay, we need more content. So SEOs automatically add more content to the pages that already rank well anyway. So more content is not always a good way, but by using graphs like this, it's easy to say, okay, the average page in the top 5 has around 7,000 words. So if I see in our Excel sheet we only have 200 words, it's an easy way to actually convince people, okay, we need to do something with our content because we're way behind in such a ratio that we actually have to make the next step. And by doing and analyzing it on this way and presenting it with clear to understand graphs, every manager will understand what's the problem. So basically the thing is, keep it simple, stupid simple. Some more deep dives based on the data. If you look to pages with high bounce rate, you can also look for pages with good traffic number but have bad conversion rates. So if a page gets a lot of traffic, people are clicking to other pages within your website, so they're not bouncing back to Google, but actually go to the next page within your website. It could be, for example, that your page content is actually not relevant enough for the users. So one of the examples you see a lot is people search for a general query like buying trousers, and they end up on a product page. So what will happen is that specific trouser is not what the users were searching for, so they click back to the category page, which actually shows an overview of all the trousers available, which is far more relevant for a general query like that. That makes it more easy to actually see what's happening. The other thing is, sometimes a page is not really optimized from a UX perspective. So the page is not clear where people can find the information, or where people actually can leave their email address for the newsletter or things like that. So try testing with a new layout or different content. Another thing we notice a lot is if the price is not low enough compared to your competitors, people will click through or bounce. But in the case if they don't bounce, maybe they search for better offers within your platform because they do want to spend money with you. If you have a look at conversion, it's also important to have a look at the average value per user. So some pages will obviously have more conversion or higher conversion rates than others. But if you have a different kinds of products, of course shoes will drive more revenue than socks. So maybe by doing a comparison based on the average value, you can actually prioritize your work based on the actual revenue you will get from it, and start prioritizing for the pages that will get you the most revenue in the end. So always add more segmented e-commerce data. The same thing applies if you do this analysis and you make segments for mobile and desktop separately. You will see that certain pages within the mobile section of your website will outperform the desktop and vice versa. So again, this is easy to convince to optimize either your desktop or your mobile based on the actual revenue per user. If you look to some penalties you can get from Google, one of them is of course Panda, which looks at the quality of your website based on content and overall user behavior. One of the things I always look at if we're dealing with a content issue is, are there a lot of pages that don't receive traffic? That could mean that Google actually removed the pages from the index or not ranked them anyway because they don't add any value at all. They've never ranked. So I always look to the pages that don't get any SEO traffic at all because it gives me some insights about how Google is thinking about those pages, especially if you see that certain pages get a lot of internal links or external links. It's important to see if it's actually getting or actually showing up in Google. If it doesn't is the case, I will always try to see how you can improve those pages or remove them. So if the majority of your page is not receiving any traffic, start just removing the old and irrelevant content. You can merge old content with new content or just update it and give it something new so Google has a reason to start indexing it again. Try clustering your pages and themes. So if you want to visualize a bigger website, especially if you have a big e-commerce client or website, it's important to cluster pages. If you have the metrics per cluster, it's more easy to prioritize. So again, if you have a web shop that sells shoes and socks, I know the number of or the amount of revenue you can make from the shoes section will be much higher than from the socks section. But also it's important to see if there are certain clusters or folders within your website that Google thinks is not relevant for you as your brand or for their customers. So if you divide it all in different folders and clusters, it's easy to see how the ratios between them are. So one of the things is if you have an equally divided internal linking structure, which means that all your main categories are linked site-wide, meaning that it's in the footer or in the main menu on top, for example. It could be that maybe you start removing a number of links to the socks pages and add some more to the shoes pages because that's the more important category page. If you look to Google penalties, it could be that certain parts of your website got a specific manual penalty or just a penguin. So Google can be really specific about what they remove from the index based on the quality of the content. So looking for a big difference between different sections of your website is always important. And not only from an SEO perspective, it could also be that maybe you focused a lot of optimizing the products or content within a certain section, but you completely forgot about another section that used to have a lot of traffic but is not performing anymore. So by clustering it, it's not only easy to make it more visible and comparable, but also gives you some insights about the ratios between within your website. one of the things I like to do is use automation for classification purposes. So next week I will talk a bit more about machine learning APIs that can actually do the work for you. So as you can imagine, if you have a big web shop with hundreds of thousands of products, um, it's more easy to actually have some API do it for you or not. For now, I can give you the tip. Have a look at MonkeyLearn. They have machine learning algorithms that are free to use, at least 100,000 times a month. And they can help you with product classification, which means if you have like 100,000 products, it will divide the products into categories for you based on the page content or the category content. So that's really interesting and easy way to automatically classify your website into clusters or folders. And the last thing I always look at is if you have an AdWords campaign or any other paid campaign, you already see and can actually extract data about the performance. So if you have pages that perform really well, but are not ranking them in SEO, just push them harder. Make sure that all the SEO relevant factors are good. So there's internal linkings pointing to it. The content on the page is good. The basic SEO elements are optimized. And there will be a big chance that we immediately start ranking and also keeps ranking because you know that the page is already ranking well or performing really well. So probably the bounce rate will be not that high because normally with paid campaigns you will actually manage based on the conversion rates, and if a page is not performing well in paid campaigns, you know, or the other way around, if you know that a page in paid campaigns is performing really well, the chance is high it also will be performing really well in SEO. So that's it for today. I will share the slides later on SlideShare. I think for now we have to go and dig into some questions you guys have.
Okay, guys. Yeah, thank you for an interesting presentation. Okay, guys. Okay. This one is laughing. Okay, guys. Any questions? Okay, we go. I don't know. We had one more guest. She came a bit early. Jane Morgan from Ireland. SEO from Ireland. We have Barry Adams from Northern Ireland, but he's Dutch. And we have Musa Hemani from Pakistan and Rizwan Balak from Pakistan. Guys, don't mute your microphones. It's your turn to if you have any question. Buddy, Jane?
If you're going to be quiet, you can ask questions. Okay.
Sorry, this one sounds is not great.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm saying that if you're going to mute yourself, then we're going to ask questions. Okay. So I got 3 questions. First is which bike do you have? You still roaming around the world for 4,000 kilometers and all those.
I can't read you. I don't know. Jan, can
No, could you repeat it?
Okay, Jen, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. My first question is, which bike do you have? The motorbike, because you said you'll be traveling on motorbike.
No,
That's the first question.
Not a
okay?
motorbike. It's a real bicycle.
Rizwan, he's Dutch. He's Dutch.
Yeah, it's a racing bike. So.
Okay, which one is it? Like there are certain categories in that. So if you could let us know, we can add it to our research also in that. And would love to see the picture of it. Okay. Second question is that you've been talking about the whole thing is that I've understood it's more like a data mining. It's more like you are controlling your own data. Because in this all scenario, we have a genius here, the SEO guru Musa. Because I'm not that good with it. He is. So I'm gonna have just one question. You did not talk about a single word about the keywords. We are talking about the content. We are talking about the links. But in SEO, where's the keywords?
Yeah, so I think that's so much of a completely different starting point that I could do a complete webinar about where to get keyword data from. So for keyword data.
My apologies. Because every content that you produce, and every promo link that you have, it comes, even the page ranking comes from the keywords. So if you would not tell us about the keywords first, and you would tell us about the permalinks or the post rankings, so it would not help us out, because on the basic we are not able to understand the basics, but we are running way too ahead with things with the page rankings. My apologies, I might be wrong. Musa, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I could not get it because where are the keywords in the whole presentation? That's just one question I have. And I need to see the bike picture, please. The bicycle picture.
Yeah, so I will keep the picture for later on. For now, yeah, it's definitely a good point, because doing research on which keywords you want to rank for is actually the first step before anything else. The thing is, like I said, I think we can do a complete different session on how to do keyword research, where to get your keywords from, and actually how Google is dealing with it. In the early days, of course, Google was actually matching individual keywords to your page content. But right now with Hummingbird and actually RankBrain, they try to understand your content. So it's not only about the keywords individually anymore, it's about every word on your page. And not only in your page, also the relevancy between content on different pages. But I see where you're coming from, and that's a good question. But I think it deserves a complete separate session.
I mean, one thing that you could do is the short list of pages that you want to work on is take those short list of pages and see for which keywords are those ranking already. You know, whether there's a good match between the keyword that they're ranking already and what you want to do on the page. You know, and there are tools for figuring out what keyword it looks like the content is about. You know.
Yeah, do you agree, Rison?
Yeah, I agree to it, because I was writing each and every point about how things would move on, the SEO tool for Excel and everything. But what I was not getting was, where are the keywords? There are no keywords, there's no ranking. And if there's no ranking, there's no posts.
No,
so
true, true.
that was the general part that was thinking, okay, fine. If we have the keywords done first in this for the data-driven presentations for SEO, I guess it would have helped us a lot more as compared to moving on the data right now. So that was one question, because when we have Musa here, I don't have questions. Trust me, it's going to kill me.
I have a question for you, Jan-Willem. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about normalizing the URL data, because if you pull data from different sources, you can often get URLs that are slightly differently configured, or for example, Majestic will have a lot of link data on URLs that are actually part of a paginated list or contain the link or have the link pointing to. And then you get different data out of your Google Analytics, different data out of Search Console. Do you have any tips or tricks so you can normalize the data and narrow it down to specific single unique URLs without losing too much of the actual information?
So the way I try to do is actually use my first list that I built by crawling as an input for the other tools. But it could also mean if you do it the other way around. So I always do it two ways. For example, Majestic data means I use the bulk backlink checker based on the list of URLs I already have. Also within Excel, SEO for Excel, there's a Majestic plugin, but I'm not sure if it's in the free version. But then the other way around, I also download the complete set of backlinks from Majestic to check it against each other's. And sometimes, if I know that, for example, the sitemap is not completely 100%, if I know that not every page is linked in, I always use secondary ways to check which URLs are there. So it could be that by downloading analytics data or Majestic data, that I figure out that there are completely additional parts of a website. So in the end, it could be that once you're doing the research, you actually find new pages. For the actual matching of pages, you could do different kinds of things. So, for example, within Google Analytics, it could be that certain URLs have tagging within it and they don't match on the individual values. What you then can do is, if you download the pages overview, the landing page overview, it always has the page title in it. So you can match it on page title instead of the URL. And then you filter out automatically the parameters.
Hoping, of course, that you have unique page titles across the website, but yes.
Yeah.
Jan, you can stop sharing your bike, picture of your bike with us.
Oh, yeah.
We enjoy it enough.
It's a really nice bike, by the way.
Yeah, it is. Yes, looks great. Do we have any more questions? Musa, do you have any questions? Jane? I
have one more question, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
The focus is primarily on the free tools, which are great, but some of the paid tools, which aren't even that expensive, you can probably get there a little bit faster, for example, using a tool like URL Profiler. I don't know if you've had experience with that.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, there are many tools, and I think if I look to the tools that I would spend my money on, for my way that I can use it for my clients and my organization, I have a look at onpage.org. Because they have a lot of functionality within their system to visualize internal linking, to have an understandable way of graphing the amount of page titles that are too long or too short. So basically, tools like Screaming Frog or Visual SEO Studio have the more old school type of graphs, but onpage.org is really all about visualizing the data that they crawl for you. Tools like Deep Crawl are a bit more expensive, but are really good for the bigger websites. But again, the visualization of the current deep crawl platform is not always suitable for, let's say, the management reports.
More questions, if you do have more questions.
Well, I had an observation
Sure.
rather than a question. That I totally agree about the visualization. You know, I love spreadsheets, and maybe everybody in this call loves spreadsheets. You know, I suspect they do. But speaking to other stakeholders in the organization, you know, definitely making the visualization interesting and different. You know, that really does make a tremendous difference, you know, because you meet a lot of people and they go, oh my God,
Yeah.
It's a data flood, you know, so I totally agree about the visualizations, and that's a nice tool. I've looked at Node Excel, but I didn't pursue it, you know, so it's nice to see the tutorials for that.
Yeah, check out the latest article, because it's really easy to understand even for non-technical people.
Yeah. Do you have any experience with Tableau?
Yeah, but it's more about the actual analytics data. So I don't have any experience to adding contextual information into it.
Yeah.
But I have to look into it.
Yeah.
I know a lot more and more people start to use it, but I haven't used it for SEO-based analysis yet.
Yeah. Very good.
We have a question from audience. I pasted it into your chat, but you have to read it out loud so people would understand what you answered.
So we got the following question: how valid a proxy do SEO think third-party link and keyword data is for Google and other search engines internal ranking metrics? Do SEO see real-world correlation between them? Let's see if I understand it correctly. I think it's a dual question. So, do you think third-party link and keyword data is actually something you can trust? It really depends. So I always like to use as much sources as I can use to actually see the quality, to detect the quality of the data. Of course, external tools will never have the data available that Google has, but it's a good indication. And it's good enough for me, at least, to base most of my observations and conclusions. That doesn't mean that I trust Google Webmaster Tools data. Probably if you search for Webmaster Tools in the UK and the US, one of my articles is still ranking and it states don't use Google Webmaster data. It was a bit more link bait, but what it actually shows you is that there is a flaw in the data that Google actually presents within Google Search Console. So never trust the individual data points. But again, for me, and as you have seen during the presentation, it's about the ratio between different pages. So the individual data points, both from Majestic, both from Google, both from every other tool, are always limited. So use it as an indication, but never use the individual data points. Then the second question is internal ranking metrics from Google. Do you see any correlations with what you see in the SEO real world? Of course, I see a lot of correlations, but I also do see a lot of crap that Google is saying. So I think this week, and it's not only crap. Actually, this week there was one of the Google engineers telling us that they not really understanding how Google is working at the moment. So the thing is, with all the technology they're using right now, and I'm specifically talking about the machine learning, that actually transforming into artificial intelligence right now with algorithms like RankBrain, they don't fully control the algorithm anymore. So the algorithm is working on itself, which is really interesting from my point of view, from a physics and scientific point of view, how they can deal with it. They know that the automatic algorithms right now are performing better, but it also means that they don't have control anymore, so they don't really understand why certain results are showing up. They see that the quality of the search results are better, but they don't know why the system comes up. And it also makes it really difficult for us from using external sources to actually say if the data is valid or not. So like I said, I'm happy that I've worked in a lot of specific niches. So I clearly know that for example, if you look to penguin thresholds, so the amount of spammy links required to get a penalty within the gambling industry is higher than if you want to rank for Nike shoes, of course. And making sure that you understand that Google is looking to every individual query. So let's say they have 500 ranking factors. For every individual query, they decide on which of those 500 factors is the most important for that specific query. So Search Metrics does a yearly review of the search ranking factors, but if you really look to the results, it doesn't make sense to try to translate it to your own industry or keywords, because it could be completely different. The research shared by agencies or companies like Moz is always a generalization of the data they've gathered. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Is there will be correlations, of course. Most of the things are really obvious. Of course, if your titles and meta descriptions are optimized versus your competitors that don't have optimized SEO elements, you will rank better. But if you look to one of the screenshots shared earlier, 9,000 words of content doesn't make sense if a user search for what's the weather or what's the time in London. So always benchmark it against your competitors on a query level. So are there any other questions, Anton?
Well, I hope it's answer Liam's question. Guys, do we have any more questions? I actually, this is very interesting about engineer and Google. I always thought they don't know what they're doing. No, I mean, I know what they're doing, but Google is so big. A long time ago, I used to program it myself, and I had programs say it was Fortran, so forget about it. But still, 5,000 lines, and after that, you don't really know what you're doing. You know it works. If it works, fine. Just leave it. And Google is so big. Somebody says it's a billion-line project. Not a single person could just understand it. And even if you look at the models, remember we had a Q&A with Google, and actually it was repeated and repeated after that, explained what is core algorithm for Google. Core algorithm, when everybody forgot about it, it works. It works, and nobody even remember what's all about. It works, it's core. So I'm not absolutely not surprised. Everybody, I asked Bill Slavsky about it, and he said, no, surely they know what they do. Yeah, but it's a billion-line program. Yeah, I don't know. For me, yeah, it works fine, great. But to take one engineer and say, do you know this and this? He said, no, I only know this my part, my little bulletin. Yeah.
Yeah, so what they're actually doing, and that's the whole world of machine learning, is they come up with the most plausible results. So what they do is they test as many different possibilities as you can imagine, and then they will actually calculate the amount of interaction or the amount of clicks or actually the performance of their results against the models they have tried. And by using machine learning, they're not limited to making just one tweak at a time. They can think of, okay, we can introduce 1,000 new ranking factors, and the machine learning will test them all for us. So that's the whole thing with not understanding what the system is doing anymore, because they don't have control how the system sees those individual factors anymore.
We do have another question from the Rose.
Okay, Ross, how important do you think are the different activities in social media and the visibility of a certain website, and how to measure its impact? To be honest, there is no direct relation between social activity and SEO rankings. But
Yeah, may I say, just sorry to interrupt you. We asked Google senior strategist Andrei Liponsev. We asked him direct question about social signals, and he said Google does not count social signals actually.
they
So
can't.
sorry?
They can't because they don't have
No,
access to the data, or
yeah,
at
they do
least
have, but
enough
okay.
data.
Google said they don't count. I mean, he probably meant they don't count direct ones. They don't count likes and everything. They probably count secondary one. I don't know. But Google, on a direct question, Google representative said we don't count social signals.
No, and it makes sense because they don't.
I have it on the record.
Yeah, they have limited access. Of course, with Google Plus, they try to get more relevant data about social signals, but they completely failed. The thing is, with social interaction, it's also about understanding what a user is actually saying on social media. So for Twitter, they have just a limited amount of characters that somebody can use to express himself. The funny thing is, within machine learning, the most used examples is actually trying to understand the sentiment of a tweet. So all the work has been done. So I think for social, they're trying to come up with a solution based on tweets, for example. They do have access to Twitter right now. For Facebook, it's a completely different game. Of course, they're competing against each other quite a lot. But for me, social is not only the networks and the things people share itself, but what they share and why they share it. So if you're a popular brand, Google will notice that by all the mentions of your brand. For me, social also means that the number of brand-related searches within Google. So how often are people searching for a product name in combination with your brand name? For me, that's social because there's an interaction with your brand taking place in Google. People are actually searching for your specific brand. So whenever I start a SEO campaign, I always ask, what are your other channels doing in terms of marketing? For me, the most effective SEO or SEO influence I can have for a client is start doing TV advertising. That's the biggest push for better rankings. I've done multiple of them, and you always can see that once more people start searching for a specific brand, the better your rankings will be across the board. And for me, that's social. So doing social marketing has an indirect effect, is that people will start searching more for your brand, will automatically write more about your brand, and that's what Google is seeing. One of the funny thing is with the whole semantic web, Google is able to actually extract your brand name as an entity, and you can actually use Google Trends to search for specific entities, not only on your brand name anymore, but you actually can use Google Trends to search for a specific entity, and that could be your brand name. And then you can see the trends, for example, about your brand, and not only about the specific mentions, but also secondary mentions, for example.
Yeah, I thought the research by BuzzSumo, where there's no direct correlation between links and social shares, I thought was really interesting. It was very interesting to see that done definitively.
I can imagine that for some campaigns there would be, but usually those metrics are used for link building campaigns. That they say, okay, we've done a link building campaign and we have like 1,000 shares on social and 13 links, and that's more because the content that you share or create for a link building campaign should be creative, so it should be worth sharing.
Yeah.
Or the other way around. There is a bigger chance that if your content is shared socially, that people will start linking to it. But there's also a big chance that you only get links and no social shares because the content doesn't suit social. I can come up with lots of examples of content that's just not relevant for Facebook or for Twitter specifically, or the other way around. If you write about SEO, it will probably get quite a lot of shares on Google+, but none on Facebook.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what you want to achieve, and again, start with defining what you want to achieve, and do some research if it makes sense that certain content will be shared. So always do market research, see if there has been similar content, how did that perform. Use tools like BuzzSumo, for example, to get an idea of what the content of your competitors is and how that has been shared across social. Then you can actually use tools like Ahrefs or Majestic to come up with the link data. And then you have a clear overview of what is the content within a specific niche or market and how did it perform on both social and both from an SEO's perspective.
I guess we can go on and on, but we've already done almost 1 hour and a half. So guys, I guess we're kind of closing it. Let's see if we do have more questions. I don't have more questions from public on our website. So basically, Jan, if people got questions later on, sometimes people got questions later on just watching the recording. How is the best way to ask you? Is it what was it, Twitter, or what would be the
just
best way?
Use Twitter or my email. It's now info@notprovided.eu.
Yeah, okay, I'll place it on our website. So guys, if you have a question, if you're watching the recording, you have a question to Jan, you can ask him, but make sure you tell him you watch his webinar and it's absolutely great. It was absolutely fantastic. You love it, and it's the best one you ever seen. After that, he won't be able to refuse. Okay, thank you very much, Jan, for very interesting webinar. It was almost 1 hour and a half. Thank you all you guys for coming today. We had Barry Adam, we have Jade Morgan, we have Musa Himani, and we have Riz Balok with us today. And really thank you very much, Jan Bobbink from Utrecht, Netherlands. Yeah,
thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you very much, everybody who were with us today, tonight, or whatever your time of the day, depends where you are. Thank you, and I'll see you all again, hopefully very soon. Thank you, and